from the outset.
The whole thing is corrupt to the core. The scale of the corruption, the figure given in the House of Lords Committee was that it was £6,000 million worth of corruption in a single year. Their accounts haven't been signed off for the last 8 years. Why would anyone wish to be governed by something which is utterly corrupt? It is beyond belief.
And I think, quite honestly, all these MEPs in Brussels, we are going to have an awful job trying to break this down simply because they're on a cushy little number. And that has always been the problem with not only the MEPs, but our own government. They're too busy feathering their own nest.
In 1998, a man called Paul van Buitenen, who worked in the European Commission, decided that fraud, waste, mismanagement, corruption and nepotism had become so bad that no longer could he hold his peace, and he went public and became the first whistleblower. It turned out that in fact all of his claims were right, and the entire European Commission were forced to resign in disgrace. The president of that commission, Jacques Santer, is now here as a member of the European Parliament for Luxembourg. And Commissioner Kinnock, who was one of the 20 that had to resign, is now a vice president of the European Union and has been put in charge of sorting out fraud. Well, how well has he done? Well, there's now another whistleblower. Her name's Marta Andreasen. She went to Commissioner Kinnock. She said, look, I'm sorry, Commissioner Kinnock, but I cannot sign off these accounts. You're using a cash-based system. You're not using double-entry bookkeeping, which incidentally was invented in the late 14th century. She said, I cannot sign off these accounts as being a true and accurate record of the EU's finances, and for her trouble, she's been suspended pending an investigation. Everybody talks about reforming fraud within the European Union. I think this whole system is so rotten that it's now unreformable.
It means that you will be ruled for the first time by people you cannot sack. Why would anyone want to do that voluntarily? It's the politicians of all three major parties who are all hell-bent on ever closer union. Ever closer union, in fact, means ever closer strangulation.
Being part of the European Union will mean Britain will permanently lose control over her armed forces and foreign policy. The new European army, so enthusiastically pushed by France and Germany, in effect threatens NATO, the organization that has kept peace in Europe for the past 50 years.
They can use our armed forces, the Crown forces, the Army, the Navy and the Air Force, in the European Rapid Reaction Force. And imagine our forces being under the command of some perhaps French or German general.
And then there's the euro. Joining it will be irreversible, according to Hans Tietmeyer, former president of the German Bundesbank. Monetary union is a path of no return, he states. No subsequent revision or withdrawal of any kind is either legally or politically provided for.
Britain's economy traditionally tracks that of the United States because of our heavy trading on the dollar. So what would be the effect of joining the euro and tying Britain's economy into this one-size-fits-all arrangement with the other nations of the EU?
Brussels wanted to know too, which is why in October 1990 Britain joined something called the European Exchange Rate Mechanism, a dress rehearsal for the euro and monetary union, which effectively locked the British pound into other EU currencies. 23 months of chaos followed. British business suffered its worst recession in 60 years. 100,000 UK businesses went to the wall. Unemployment doubled from 1.5 to 3 million. More bankruptcies were filed than in any previous 2-year period ever. Repossessions of property increased 7-fold. By 1993, over 500,000 of us were at least 3 months in arrears on our mortgages. Britain lost estimated reserves of 68 billion sterling.
And as someone once put it, you may be very friendly with your neighbours, but would you actually hand over complete control of your bank account to your friendly neighbours? Quite probably not. And that's precisely what we would be doing if we joined the euro.
And if you're in Ireland or in Latvia, the euro is going to be great because you're having everything paid for. Unfortunately, it's by us. And I don't think we can afford or sustain that level of payment for that amount of time. If we joined the euro and the same thing happened to our economy as happened to Germany, we could all find ourselves struggling to pay our mortgages.
There's been a great debate going on for the last 5 years about the supposed benefits of the single currency. We're told that business needs it, and we're told above all that it's good for jobs. Well, how's it working out 3 years down the road? Well, in Germany, just 2 miles across the border, there are now 4.6 million people unemployed. They are experiencing exactly what we experienced during ERM back in the early 1990s. They cannot set their own interest rates to set their own economy. And the great risk of joining the euro is that you can finish up totally out of sync with the rest of the European economy, and there's nothing that your democratically elected government can do to alter it.
There exists on the continent a massive unfunded pension debt run up by German, French and Italian politicians, and it's been estimated at £1,300 billion. And that would be something which we, the British people, would be expected to contribute.
But how could Britain ever free herself from the European Union through military action if all her armed forces were under EU command? And in the unlikely event that she did regain her independence, how could Britain relaunch her own currency if she had handed all her gold and currency reserves over to the European Central Bank?
And the question that you can ask our ministers is, how is it that they have sworn oaths of office that say that they will defend all jurisdictions and authorities belonging to Her Majesty against all foreign powers, and then they give away those powers of governance, or are purporting to give away those powers of governance, to those that owe no allegiance to this crown?
Well, today the European Parliament has voted on the admission of 10 new member states. I have to tell you that I was one of only 22 members of a House out of 626 that voted for those countries not to join. I did so not just because it would save the British taxpayer a great deal of money if they didn't join. I did it for their sakes because most of these countries have just left a system of centralised, undemocratic communist government based in Soviet Russia, and I fear they're about to re-enter a very similar system. But I must say this to you, that not everything about this European project is bad news, because the really good news is there's something we can do about it. If we want to, and all we need is the political will, a British Parliament at any moment in time can vote for us to have an amicable divorce from this corrupt club. We can then renegotiate a genuine free trade agreement, which is what we thought we'd signed up to in the first place. And even here, commissioners like Kinnock and Patten and luminaries such as Giscard d'Estaing say that if Britain doesn't want to be part of this full political union at which they're attempting, we can, if we want, get out of it and renegotiate a free trade deal. We don't need to be in the EU to trade with the EU. That idea is anachronistic and dates back to the 1950s and 60s. So it really is up to us. But we have to do something about it. We have to vote for people who will not allow this continual surrender of our sovereignty to continue.